Hello. It's hard to describe what a normal day used to feel like when your whole world has since gone up in flames, but if I had to, I'd say it was peaceful. The kind of quiet that only comes from years of routine, from living beside someone long enough that you start finishing each other's sentences and predicting what they'll cook on a Wednesday. That was Sandra and me, or at least that's what I believed. 22 years. That's not a fling. That's not some whim you can shake off when the weather changes. That's a lifetime. We had our rituals, like sacred little habits passed down through repetition. A hot pot of coffee before the sun had even shaken the dew off the grass, crossword puzzles passed back and forth with a shared pencil in the evenings, and church on Sundays even when the weather turned nasty or our sun had long since stopped coming. It wasn't flashy, but it was ours. I didn't need more than that. So when things started to shift, it didn't come as a scream or a thunderclap. It was slower, more like the quiet hiss of a leaking tire. First, it was the way she'd linger a little longer in front of the mirror before heading to the grocery store. I didn't think much of it at first. If anything, I thought it was sweet. Maybe she wanted to feel good about herself again. Midlife wasn't easy. We were both graying in places we hadn't noticed before, and the laugh lines on our faces were starting to look like permanent carvings. I figured she was just reclaiming a bit of youth, a bit of confidence. Hell, I even complimented her. I told her she looked nice in that new blue blouse she wore one Thursday afternoon. She smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile I remembered. It didn't touch her eyes. Then the trips to the store got longer. She'd say she was just running out for milk, and 2 hours later, she'd come back with a single bag and a vague excuse about how crowded everything was. She stopped asking if I wanted to come along, which had always been our little thing. Picking produce together, bickering about brands, laughing at the gossip on the checkout magazine covers. But that part vanished, replaced by tight smiles and quick exits. I asked her if something was bothering her. Work, hormones, maybe stress about Evan applying for colleges or her mother's declining health. She shrugged me off, said I was overthinking things. I wanted to believe her. God help me, I really did. Because the alternative, that she was slipping away, was something I wasn't ready to face. But you can only lie to yourself for so long before reality kicks the door in. It was a rainy Tuesday. I remember because I had just come back from the post office, the kind of day where the sky can't decide if it wants to pour or clear. I went to put away some old coats in the hall closet, moving around some boots that neither of us had worn in years. That's when I found it. A small, sleek black phone tucked into a shoebox under a stack of old scarves. My heart didn't leap immediately. At first, I just stared at it, confused. We weren't a family that had secrets. Sandra barely understood her regular phone, let alone kept a spare. But then I pressed the power button and the screen lit up. Notifications. Dozens. I didn't even need to unlock it to see what it was. Texts with names I didn't recognize. Late-night messages, some of them starting with, "Last night was amazing," and ending in emojis that made my blood run cold. I didn't say anything to her that day. I didn't throw the phone across the room. I didn't scream or cry or storm out. I just sat down on the edge of our bed and stared at it like it was a live wire, something that had always been hidden right under my nose, humming with electricity I'd been too blind or too trusting to hear. That phone wasn't just a piece of tech. It was the key to a whole other life she'd been living, a world I hadn't been invited into, a world I wasn't even meant to know existed. And suddenly, everything made sense. The new perfume I didn't recognize. The way she started locking the bathroom door when she got ready. The girls' nights that never seemed to involve her actual friends anymore. The coldness, the distance. I used to think we were just in a slump, that every couple goes through quiet patches. But this wasn't quiet. This was deliberate. This was betrayal, dressed in silence. From that moment on, I couldn't unsee it. Every interaction, every glance, every word out of her mouth carried a double meaning. I was sleeping next to a stranger, and the scariest part was, I didn't even know when she became one. I went from being her husband to her alibi, from partner to background noise. So yeah, it started in upstate New York, in a quiet suburb outside Albany, in a house where I thought love still lived. Trouble doesn't knock with a warning. It slips in like fog under the door, and before you know it, you're staring at a phone that shouldn't exist, wondering how long you've been loving a ghost. You know, when you spend over 2 decades with someone, the smallest things start to carry the most meaning. A glance, a pause, the way they stir their coffee or how their voice lifts when they say your name. That's the kind of intimacy time gives you, not just knowing someone's favorite color or how they take their eggs, but being able to tell when their silence is a scream. And that night, our anniversary, it should have been one of those small but meaningful rituals. Nothing flashy, no need for expensive dinners or getaways. Just the two of us at home, like we always did. I grilled steak the way she liked it, marinated with that bourbon glaze I picked up years ago on a trip we took to Kentucky. I even bought a bottle of her favorite red, the one she used to hide in the back of the cabinet like it was some sacred relic. The table was set, candles lit, not because I thought it would blow her away, but because I believed we still mattered enough to do it right. And she walked in like it was any other Tuesday. No smile, no surprise, just a dull, "Hey," as she dropped her purse on the counter and slid into her usual seat, thumbs already dancing across her phone screen. I stood there holding the tongs, smoke still curling off the meat, wondering if maybe I'd said the date wrong. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe it wasn't the 18th. But no, I checked the calendar 3 times that day, even got a reminder on my phone. 23 years ago that night, we danced in a rented hall with plastic tablecloths and a DJ who played the wrong first song. We laughed about it. We held hands all night. And here she was now, texting someone while I plated her food like a stranger serving a customer. I slid the plate in front of her. She didn't look up, just scrolled, smirking at something I wasn't part of. "Medium rare," I said. "Just how you like it." She hummed. No thanks, no nod, just a flick of her eyes before they darted back down to that glowing screen. I waited for something, a mention, a joke, even a quick "happy anniversary" muttered over a mouthful. But there was nothing. So I gave her an out. I made it light. "You know what day it is, right?" That's what I asked her, smiling, half laughing, trying to keep the shake out of my voice. She blinked, barely raising her gaze. "Huh?" "Our anniversary," I said, setting my fork down like it weighed 50 pounds. A beat. A second longer than necessary. Then, with the kind of dismissive shrug you'd give a junk mail flyer, she mumbled, "Oh, sorry, I've just been really busy." Really busy. Those 2 words cut deeper than anything else. Not because they were harsh, but because they were empty, hollow. No apology, no warmth. Just a dismissal, like she was brushing lint off a jacket. And in that second, I knew. I wasn't the reason she forgot. See, I know that face. I've known it since we were 19, sitting in the back of a beat-up car, dreaming about a life that was supposed to be simple and honest and full of love. That glow, the kind that makes your cheeks warm and your eyes shine like there's a secret too beautiful to keep in. It wasn't stress. It wasn't work. It was excitement. And it wasn't for me. That's when the feeling started. That ache in your chest that isn't sadness or anger. Just a vacuum. A sucking, cold emptiness where something used to live. I sat across from her, chewing through steak that tasted like ash, and she giggled softly at something on her screen. Not a joke I told, not a meme I shared. It was someone else, and I knew it with every cell in my body. After dinner, she took her wine to the bathroom. Said she was going to take a long shower, unwind. I nodded, playing along, but my hands were trembling as I cleared the plates. I stared at the dishwasher for a long minute, just breathing. In and out. In and out. Trying to talk myself out of what I already knew I was going to do. Because I didn't want to become the kind of man who snoops. I didn't want to be that guy. The one who rifles through purses, checks texts, puts a tracker on a phone. That's not who I was raised to be. But when trust starts to crack, it's like a dam bursting. You can't stop the flood. You just drown in it. So I crept up the stairs, heart pounding in my throat. Her phone was on the nightstand, screen still lit up with a soft glow. I didn't even need the passcode. Her fingerprint was still registered. I told myself I'd look at one message. Just one. Just enough to calm this storm in my chest. But 1 turned into 10. 10 turned into 30. And by the time the shower water stopped, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding a phone that no longer felt like hers. It felt like a foreign object. Proof of a reality I hadn't been allowed into. The texts were full of hearts, kisses, plans. And not the kind of late-night flirty stuff you'd send to some faceless stranger on a whim. These were conversations, inside jokes, familiarity, intimacy. One message said, "I can't stop thinking about your hands on me last night," and I felt something in me twist so hard I almost dropped the phone. There were voice notes too. I listened to one, just one. Her voice, soft and breathy, whispering things she hadn't said to me in years. That was it. I didn't need more. I set the phone down like it burned. Walked back downstairs, poured myself a glass of the wine I bought for our anniversary. And I sat there in the dark, staring at nothing, the clock ticking so loudly I thought it might shatter. Because that night I realized something far worse than just the fact that she'd forgotten. She hadn't. She just didn't care. She was already gone. There's something uniquely humiliating about realizing you've been made into a punchline in the very story you thought you were writing. I used to think betrayal was a sharp, sudden thing. A shout, a slammed door, a night gone wrong. But the truth is it creeps up on you, in whispers and half-truths, until you're ankle-deep in it, staring at your reflection in a cracked mirror and wondering how the hell you missed it all. That's where I found myself, trying to piece together how long the other man had been in our life. Because yes, it was our life, not just mine, not just hers. Ours. Until she started sharing pieces of it with someone else. Someone younger. Someone new. The first time she mentioned the gym, it was casual. Said she wanted to start feeling like herself again, maybe shake off the winter slump. I thought it was a great idea. Hell, I practically begged her to do it. I even paid for the damn membership up front, said I was proud of her for taking initiative. She smiled, kissed my cheek, told me I was sweet, told me she'd be home in time for dinner. And for a while, she was. But then the sessions got longer. Early mornings, late evenings. Said she was doing classes, cardio, working with a trainer named Matt. Just Matt. I didn't think anything of it. I was proud, supportive. I'd even started getting up early to make her smoothies. Banana, peanut butter, protein powder, the works. I wanted her to feel taken care of. I wanted her to know I was cheering her on. God, what a fool I was. It was a Thursday night when I decided to dig deeper. The phone, the one I'd found weeks earlier, had a sync to cloud storage. She didn't know. Maybe she thought she turned it off. Maybe she just didn't care. Either way, her photos were there, like a breadcrumb trail left by a woman too confident to hide her tracks. And when I opened the folder labeled Recents, my breath caught in my throat. There they were. Dozens of images, each one more damning than the last. Her and him, this trainer she'd casually mentioned in passing, shirtless in a mirror selfie, holding hands in a hotel room, her curled into his chest like she belonged there. The kind of closeness that doesn't happen overnight. The kind that's been nurtured, cultivated, built in silence while I folded her laundry and vacuumed the hallways of a house that had become nothing but a backdrop for her lies. And it wasn't just the photos, it was her in them. The way she smiled, the way she leaned into him like gravity itself was pulling her away from me and toward him. There was a softness to her eyes I hadn't seen in years, and the worst part was, I remembered when she used to look at me like that. I stared at those images for so long I started to go numb. My hands didn't even shake. They just froze on the mouse as I clicked through frame after frame of my wife's second life. A life where I didn't exist. That gym bag she carried every morning with such urgency, I opened it the next day when she left it by the door in a rush. No sneakers, no towel, just lace. Black lace, the kind I hadn't seen her wear for me in over a decade. It was like peeling back the skin on a lie and seeing the rot underneath. And then came the financials, hotel receipts, buried in our joint checking account like little landmines waiting to be stepped on. Uber charges to addresses I didn't recognize, places nowhere near the gym. I cross-checked one of the addresses. A boutique hotel tucked into the next county. A room for two, booked under her name. She didn't even bother to use a fake email. It wasn't even the affair that made me sick, it was the audacity. She paraded around this town like she was untouchable, like I was too blind or too stupid to notice. The way she looked me in the eye at dinner, the same night she probably got out of that man's bed and asked me to pass the salt like everything was fine. That's what made my stomach turn. Because I realized she didn't think I'd ever catch on. That's the kind of contempt you can't fake. It's not just cheating, it's disdain. She thought she was clever, slick, that I'd keep making her smoothies and rubbing her feet while she texted him under the table. And maybe I would have. Maybe I would have let it all keep sliding by because when you're in love, really in love, you don't expect the dagger to come from the person you share your bed with. But I did catch on. And when I did, it wasn't some soap opera explosion. I didn't scream. I didn't trash the house. I didn't drive to the hotel and demand answers. No, I sat at the kitchen table with all the evidence in front of me, photos, receipts, messages, and I just stopped. Stopped pretending. Stopped lying to myself. Stopped holding on to the idea that this was just a phase, just a mistake, just a detour we could come back from. She was gone. Had been for a long time. And the man she was running to wasn't better than me. He was just newer, shinier, less worn down by life. He didn't build this house. He didn't raise our son. He didn't sit by her side after her surgery, but he had abs and tattoos and enough free time to play house in a hotel room while I stayed home and washed the sheets she no longer wanted to sleep in. So yeah, he was younger. Of course he was. But I wasn't the fool anymore. Bye-bye.